Hello everybody, welcome to Sonic Talk episode 670, recording today on Wednesday the 26th of May. There are signs that we might actually be getting some summer in the UK. I can see sun. Look, I even opened the window. But it's been shocking so far this year. I want to get outside and wear shorts and, you know, do healthy things. But somewhat incompatible with the topic of the show, which is music production, studio work, electronic music, software, synthesizers, all that kind of stuff. That's what we're going to be talking about for the next hour or so. We've got some great guests for you this week, and also I want to say hello to our friends over in YouTube, on IRC, and also in Discord. I'm actually streaming today live to the Discord stage. It's a test. I just want to see if it works. Nobody's listening at the moment, but I didn't promote it. So if you do want to flip to the audio only version, if you go over to our Discord, which I think is this, there is the Sonic Talk live audio feed, which will be working, although if you're watching the recorded version of this, it's all completely pointless. Also want to say thank you to our Patreoners, and if you're interested in supporting us, patreon.com/Sonicstate. I've been posting ad-free versions of some of the stuff, as well as lots of exclusive video, exclusive sounds, that kind of thing. Just head over and support us. Much welcome. Very much appreciated. So feel free. Very affordable, less than a cup of coffee, depending where you are in the world. So yes, thank you very much, everybody. Also, there was another button I was going to press, which was, what happens if I press this one? Oh yes, this one. I'm trying because Wagyu is very kind. There are several listeners on YouTube who are posting super stickers and super comments, and I wanted a way of throwing something up on screen, and the last one that came in was Wagyu from last week. So thanks, mate. And if anybody else does it, you'll get one of those if it works. I'm still ironing out the kinks, but I felt it was only fair rather than me just mention it. So cheers, everybody. Anyway, let's say hello to our guests. We have a fulsome panel, and we'll start over there with Jamie Liddell, singer, producer, songwriter, sonic experimenter, podcaster. In fact, there is his podcast over at hanging out with Audiophiles. Last one is Alessandro Cortini. How are you, Jamie? You good?
I'm good, man. And I wanted to say, like, check it out. I mean, it's.
Oh, you're in the shorts.
Look. Oh, yeah. Woo. It's shorts because in USA, I'm currently in Ohio. I'm away from home. I mean, as you can probably tell, but it's blazing out here. I've actually got I've got a bit of one of those backs, you know, when you've had too much sun and it's all a bit chafy.
That sounds I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm not going to show you that.
No, that's fine. When it gets so hot that the backs of your knees sweat, that's the one that I don't like. That's where I find that's when I know it's too hot. Yeah. They're not supposed to.
You get your dog around to sort of lick that off.
Oh no, I haven't got one. I haven't got a dog. I'm not going to get a dog.
You need
So why do you want a dog, sir? Well, I wanted to lick the back of my knees in the summer.
Are you familiar with knee sweat?
I'm not. I don't think I'm going for that. I'm not going for that.
No.
You keep your perversions to yourself. Sorry. This is a family show.
Sorry.
Family show. Oh look, Rocky's just done a superstar. I'm going to see if this works. Whoa. Yay, there we go. Look, Rocky, thank you very much. Rocky67, very much appreciated. Anyway, lovely to have you, Jamie. And we'll hopefully we'll be hearing a lot more from you as well. And we also have Mr. Matt Hodson, aka Maths with 2 T's, producer, educator, live streamer, all of those things. They're in his modular cave. How are you, Matt?
I'm really good, actually. Yeah, I've just spent the past couple of weeks marking all my master's students' work, writing music, doing some pitching for TV and adverts, just trying to stay out of trouble, really.
Same old, eh? Yeah, the life of a busy, multi-talented, multi-threaded musician life. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'm still sticking to my releasing one track every month for the whole of this year, writing, recording, producing, releasing it, doing music videos and all of that. It's a really nice project to have for this year. And that idea as well of putting stuff out every month as opposed to putting out an album and then, doing it all at one splurge, sort of like dribbling it out throughout the year. It's been really good because it allows me to keep in contact with those that keep coming back and the audience and having that connection with them and that sort of monthly conversation with them. So, I'm enjoying it. It's a lot of hard work, though.
Interesting as well, because it means that, because obviously when you put out a body of work, we've had this conversation before, but I still find it interesting. When you put out a body of work, when you finish, you sort of have to think, how does it all fit together? You know, maybe you ditch a track because it's not in the same style as you developed over the last. Whereas this way, you could just do what you want, or what what you seems like a good plan.
Yeah. I mean, the tracks are just changing. The one that I've just written today, I made a load of drones, put them into the Bitbox sampler here, and just was starting them, and they were overlapping, and it was very sort of like Brian Eno, ambient music for airports kind of thing, using it in that way, and then manipulating it in real time. Whereas last month's recording was this brutal techno piece. So it's whatever I want to do, and that's kind of nice. I'm just kind of going with the flow.
So it depends on do you wake up in a brutal techno mood, or does it as the time, or is it?
I always wake up in a brutal techno mood, Nick. That's my default.
I think that I'm going to write that down as a possible title. That probably has nothing to do with anything else. A brutal techno mode.
I did
write that down anyway.
Other show. What was the other name that I came up with? You did name one show already after one thing I could put. Anyway,
I'm struggling to remember, but that doesn't mean it wasn't memorable. Yes, I'm struggling to remember. Yes, that's right.
I might even nick that for a song title if that's all right, Nick. I think you should.
Of course you can. It's yours.
Doing it.
Actually, no, you can't use it. I'm going to send my lawyers after you. You dare. Anyway, thank you very much, Matt. And also we have Mr. Dominic Hawken, who is in his studio. How are you, Mr. Wiggly, who is, in fact, plugin maker. And in fact,
I am today.
Yeah,
no, so it's going really well.
Introducing the incinerator. Watch the launch video.
Thank you for the plug.
MrWiggly.co.uk. Do check it out.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've been doing some plugins, which is good. Working on the next one and the next release of Incinerator. So thank you for that plug. It's going really well, which is fantastic. But also this week, I've been getting into Discord a little bit. I launched a Mr. Wiggly Discord. So funny you should mention that you're now streaming into Discord, and I've got a little Discord that's linked on the website, and there's a much bigger Discord run by a guy called Beardy Man, who a lot of people will have come across. I'm sure he's a beatboxer, and he's got this amazing Beardytron big live synth thing. Amazing. So I've gone down a rabbit hole with that for a while, and we've contacted and chatted on Discord, and I've been looking at kind of live loopy, manipulatey kind of things, just because it seemed like a real lot of fun. And I was toying with the idea of coming up with another plugin that does something like that, and just kind of looking at what's out there. And there's some really good stuff. Very, very talented guy. And not a well-known guy in the grand scheme of things. Go and check out his Twitch. I mean, he had about 500 followers or something. I mean, he's ridiculously understated for the talent that guy has. So just look up Beardy Man and get to it instantly, because he's just amazing. He's doing live streams on Twitch and YouTube now, and they blow you apart. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure, Jamie, you must know him, because he was one of the... He's got a photographic memory, so he's able to put these kind of things together. He's like a live looper, which I know, Jamie, you've been involved in, but he has this insanely complicated rig, which is, I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah, he's great guy.
Of course, yeah. No, I mean, it's amazing to see the iterations, and he's not just good at the beatbox, he's a very techie guy, because he's essentially had to build that machine, which is what I did with my looper back in the day in Max, but that was, about in the late 90s. So the tech was definitely different then. He's just keeping going with one of the things that is so impressive and so, I don't know, lacking. Like, I've always wanted Ableton to be able to record into its simpler, for example, so that you could use it as a buffer sampler. Like, one of the great things he does is just be able to record a small snippet of sound from his voice. Then it's instantly available as a polyphonic synth. It's like, you might have something like that in an SK1, but it's quite hard to do that,
Interesting.
in the way that he's done it. Yeah, I mean, just even that simple tearaway idea. I mean, there used to be
funny you should mention that
instant sampler.
Oh, really?
Instant sampler was the sampler back in the day.
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah.
Crossfade loop synth by Expert Loopers. I think I got this from him. And Expert Loopers made this plugin called Crossfade Loop Synth. And I don't know if this would work, but I think I can go, hello. Let me do it again. Hello. 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 Hello.
Yeah.
So you're instantly just kind of doing that crazy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
which is cool, you know. So that
Nice.
I stuck that in
Definitely.
here because it was going to be this is what I found this week. And it's
Right.
just a
Well,
perfect copy.
let's leave it there.
yeah.
Let's stop the teasing. And
Yeah,
one thing I
so-
will say about Beardy Man is he had a Keith McMillan floor preset thing, and it went down before the show that he did in Bath, and we had one here, and I lent it to him, but it never came back. I guess it was his interview fee, but he still got it. I hope it's still working.
Nick, if you don't mind me saying that, one of the things, I'm just going to blow Jamie's trumpet here a little bit, because one of the live things that I'd love to go and still watch is, Jamie, I think you was playing, I think it was a Warp Special, Royal Albert Hall. It's on YouTube, and you're live looping, and you've got these crazy visuals, and this guy's like gluing this hat onto you with something on it, I don't know.
Yeah,
and that,
man.
I don't know, it's one of the best performances. I love it. It is so... I don't know. It's so real, so organic, so in the flow, and back in that day as well. And it's your own software that you're using. I love that performance. Anyone, go check it out after the show.
Thanks,
it's on
man.
YouTube. It's brilliant. I love it.
It was a funny situation there because it was a Warp tour with the London Sinfonietta, playing a bunch of songs from Aphex Twin, and I was on Warp Records for 14 years. So I've done a lot with them. Like, that was a little bit back in the day, but they gave me 8 minutes. And like, so it was a rush, man. We just had to get on with it. I think it went on for 20 in the end, but still, the idea was 8 minutes. But
Wow.
It's up there.
The
The projector was wrong, that it didn't work, so they had to hire in a last minute projector, and it came back an absolute monster projector, like a total overpowered thing. And so the visuals for that show were just it was like,
But everybody was burnt in the shape of projections on their exposed skin. Everybody left with a Warp logo on their foreheads. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Jamie. I failed to mention that you were the original instigator with me gushing on about Beardy Man, and you were doing it way before.
No,
so, I mean, just genius.
Beardy Man's
genius.
He's tremendous. I mean, he's always. I mean, the thing about Beardy Man, you say back in the day, he used to do really successful YouTube videos. I mean, he won a lot of competitions and stuff, and he'd do sort of a cooking thing, and he's a great comedian.
Yeah.
So a lot of that beatbox world, like Reggie Watts and stuff, it kind of, the looping thing kind of goes kind of hand in hand with stand-up comedy in a way, improv. So it's sort of, I see him in the sort of improv world of kind of almost comedy and music. It's a kind of interesting space.
Yeah.
He's very good. I saw him live when he did a piece for us. Anyway, gosh, we got topics and stuff, haven't we? But yeah, fascinating. Thank you though. That was great. Well worth. So the first video I'm going to play is from a chap called Dan Larsson. And it's a kind of, production techniques video, and it's rather clickbaity titled, "This is why your music is boring." And this is, let's see if I fast forward it a bit.
Here, welcome to the newest Synthesize Sunday episode. And in this video, I want to show you why your music sucks.
So it starts off with this, which, is fairly static, but then he ends up in this kind of really interesting, adds all of these really interesting
again, coming from operator
elements.
And
I think we'll hear it in a second.
The LFO is missing. But anyway, it sounds so cool on itself.
And so he adds a few elements, a few risers and whatnot. And I just thought this was really, I found it interesting because not only is he really good, so I'll post this link because it'll go in the chat rooms and whatnot, but that he was also, it illustrates this kind of concept because many of us are maybe a bit more old school in terms of, you write the song, you arrange the song stands on its own. But obviously in sort of modern dance culture, pop, and certainly music that I suppose the kids are listening to, it's about that, but it's also about the production techniques and this kind of like ear candy and the excitement that these production tips can join in. And so there's a really interesting balance between those things. And some of the stuff that he was doing, it did start quite basic, but then actually it generated this excitement, and there wasn't an awful lot that he added. I mean, it was just a few key things, and you're like, oh wow. I mean, he's obviously very talented, and it worked pretty well. I don't know. I thought, let me see. Well, I'll come to you, Jamie, because we've had a long discussion about the sort of the classic songwriting and the ability to perform vocally, and these things which are very much the now. Whereas, and this is kind of almost the antithesis of this, but it complements that as well in a way, right? Well, obviously it does.
Yeah, it was funny. You know, my son's really into Talking Heads these days, and which is welcome. I mean, we have sort of slightly encouraged it, but you know, with that kind of band, and you've got the meat and potatoes, essentially, like in that example, like he's playing. You've got the guitar, you've got the drums, you've got the center of the song. But with production extensions, you know, courtesy of Eno a lot of the time when they're Talking Heads, you get much more than just simple ear candy, I suppose. It actually puts the song in a completely different place and takes it away from that familiar world of band. I mean, I suppose it's not quite as applicable when you're starting with electronic sound, which is more abstract anyway. But yeah, certainly some kind of, I mean, what the most interesting thing he did to me was like add a kind of counter rhythm, like with a soloed conga part that sounded pretty weird on its own, and like that was sort of revealing. I mean, adding spaciousness and a slower kind of reverberant backdrop is a relatively simple thing anyone can kind of do, but adding kind of a counterpoint rhythm, I think that was cool. I think that showed a next level of skill, and yeah, it's good stuff.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, I used to do a lot of remixing, and I remember, you know, that there was this thing where you'd have the section, but the thing I used to really spend ages on were the turnarounds, the little kind of the drum fills, the snare fills, the sort of like the bits that would join the section together. That's where you could get really creative, and that, I suppose that's something that maybe has come along more with the culture of remixing. I don't know, Dom, you're kind of, you know, you remix, you've been remixed, you also songwrite, so I mean, you must be aware of all of these things, and it's which bit do you get the most joy from, do you think?
Well, I love songwriting, but this is production, right? Isn't it? I mean, songwriting with a guitar and stuff. I love coming up with stuff, and when it's easy, I love the production side. But I actually find it quite complicated, and the stuff that he was showing, which were the kind of the risers and the droppers and the you know, you've got this fundamentally pretty lame beat going on and some stuff going on, and by sticking little parts underneath it and making stuff move, you've suddenly got some life in the track. And it's pretty obvious when you think about it, but a lot of people, especially if you're just putting some kind of 4/4 house beat on something and then the arpeggio goes on, sounds great in your headphones, you wouldn't think about doing anything else. And if you're looking at techno or something, you know, you've got very, very few parts going on, and they tend to last for a long time, and they have to evolve in such a way that the person who is kind of lost in the music is going on some kind of journey, and that could be really subtle, but it has to be right. You know, you're not just going to dance for 16 bars or 32 bars to something that doesn't change. And if you're looking at producing, say, a pop thing, it's equally valid, just in a slightly more in-your-face way. And I think I've kind of always tried to get that Mark Hollis quote always comes up from Talk, which is, you know, if you're gonna if you're gonna play a note, make sure it's the right note, and don't bother playing it. You know, don't play two notes when you can play one, and make sure it's the right sound. Something along those lines. A classic, which quote that I can never remember. But you know, the fewer the sounds you put into it, the better those sounds have to be, and the better it sounds. But the real subtle little tweaks that most people probably wouldn't be aware of, but they're aware subconsciously, make a massive difference to the production. And you can go the Trevor Horn route, where, I mean, if I'm listening to something, I hear little things, I hear a space, and I'm going, actually, I want that to just tuck in. It could be a tom note, it could be a whoosh, it could be a rim shot, it doesn't matter, you know, but you hear something that's just pushing your brain into falling into the chorus and lifting the chorus a bit higher. So there's loads of different ways of doing it, and his ways were pretty easy for people to follow. I mean, it was a real benchmark kind of, this is what you do, here's a gap and we're going up here, so put a swoop up, you know, and getting, I don't know, little just side chaining big chords underneath it really quietly, or using white noise coming out of choruses and stuff.
Yeah, he used quite a lot of white noise, didn't he? Which was,
yeah, you've just, because it just cuts, you know, and it sounds good over anything really, because there's no room for anything else. You can't stick white noise on top of a pop chorus. But the whole point is you should be kind of writing fader movements in, right? And knobs, that's changing the filter or changing the resonance over the course of the 32 bars. Just make it move, because that's what instruments do. Synths don't, unless you actually have got an LFO or some movement going. And then just here, think of it like a picture or whatever. Here, where you kind of want to be pushed in a direction and it's not going there. Yeah, and that to me is production. Production.
It's interesting, Matt, isn't it? Because I mean, you work in the kind of modular environment, a lot of live stuff. I mean, are you able to add? How do you accomplish those things, those transitional things? Because they're harder to achieve live, because you can't necessarily craft the kind of nifty little bit and tie up a whole bunch of modules or whatever for that little whatever it is that you've got in your head.
Yeah, that riser or whatever. Yeah, the thing is about doing it in something as big as this and only this when you're on the road is those transitions, they're different. They're not perfectly executed risers in like you could do in the computer. In a DAW, you can get super hypercritical and you can draw everything into the 9th degree and get that drop it bang on. Here, I've got 2 hands, 10 fingers, that's it. And it's whatever I can do at that particular time in that moment. And it goes right back to what Don was just saying. It's like if you want that movement and excitement in electronic music, rather than drawing stuff in with automation and your mouse, chuck your mouse away. Get a MIDI controller out. All you need is one dial. Map it to something, and just do it organically. I really think it comes through in the music a lot, and it's one of the reasons why I've got into working with hardware so much is because of that connection I have with the instrument, with the filter, with the resonance, with the whatever I'm playing with. That connection, I think, comes through in the music. And you just listen to the stuff that I've released this year. Everything has been done in that way. Everything is one take. That's all you're hearing is one take, the stereo mix, and that's it, job done. And every movement is something that I'm reacting to. And that's what we're doing, isn't it? When we're making live electronic music in this way, you're reacting from one thing to another. So I might have a simple bass line going, and then I'll react to that. What's my response to that? Okay, I want a bit more high end, so I'm going to go up an octave. Okay, now what I'm going to react to that. It's a bit too dry. I want some reverb. I'll take it away. You're constantly reacting to the previous thing you've just done and changing. And they call it the flow, I guess. It's the same sort of like Jamie does and Tim XL does with the flow machine and that kind of thing. You're reacting and creating on the fly. But what's really exciting about that is you're producing music, you're writing music, and you're mixing music simultaneously. That for me is where it gets exciting. The thought of going back and starting a track, just opening up a DAW and just throwing in some beats and stuff like that, for me is like, if I have to do that, I'll do that. I do that for TV and adverts. I do that if I'm remixing someone. But for me, the place to start is to start with just a few very, very simple ideas, usually on the modular, just like a simple riff. And that's your starting point. And you vibe with it.
And then, you've got the,
Yeah. Anyway, I could go on about this all day. I mean, some people would say that electronic music is not an art form. It's not a performance art form. I mean, I totally disagree with that. Just go look at what we was talking about earlier with Jamie on stage at Royal Albert Hall, or look at what Beardy Man's doing and that kind of thing. We've still got a lot to do to go forward with that.
Absolutely. Interesting. I have overrun a little bit, so I think it's probably only fair that we have a message from our friends over at iZotope, because it's quite relevant, really.
iZotope Producers Club is a one-of-a-kind membership for producers ready to take their tracks to the next level. Once you join, you'll gain access to powerhouse iZotope plugins and a curated selection of tools from our partners, such as Melodyne from Celemony. Plus, as long as you're a member, you'll get every future update to the iZotope plugins in your membership for no extra cost. We'll also regularly serve you new curated content like exclusive inspiration-sparking sample packs and preset packs, and industry-leading training ranging from our own tutorials to vocal production lessons from the world-renowned Berklee Online, taught by Grammy-winning producer and engineer Prince Charles Alexander. With new content being added every month full of valuable production techniques, tips and tricks, and solutions to common production problems, becoming a member is an investment in your career that grows as you and your career do. For more information on iZotope Producers Club, head to iZotope.com.
Indeed you can, but you can also head over to iZotope.com/sonictalk and enter the code SONIC10 at checkout to save 10% on any iZotope plugin or bundle, which I'm reliably informed they're running a promo this week, which is for $49. You can get 11 plugins as part of the community appreciation bundle, and you get to save 10% on that as well. So we thank them very much for their generosity there, and always nice to hear from them. So yes, I'm sorry, I'm distracted. I've just realised I'd made a load of modifications to my setup, and I'm sort of forward thinking on how on earth I'm going to achieve some of the things that I know I've got to do later in the show, which is it's kind of what people like Jamie and Beardy Man and what will have to worry about when they haven't rehearsed, which I'm sure they do more than I do. So there we go. Right, well let's take a second one. I'm gonna go for this one next. So this is a video by a chap called Synth Forever. It's the Korg Trident. I think this is a Mark II in this case.
Is the Korg
Trident. Wanted this synth so much when I was a young lad. It just looked like the bee's knees, 8-voice,
incredible
analog,
polyphonic 8-voice analog synthesizer
with a flanger
that has 3 independent instruments.
That's what I think. That's
and
it.
Flanger.
Yeah. And a flanger. Anyway, I won't play the whole thing, but it's a nice exploration of all that. And it was this again, one of these massive flagship synthesizers that I think came around. It was originally released in 1980, and it came about because we have the Jupiter 8 and these synths which were designed to be performing live, because a lot of this high production value studio music was going out on the road. So you needed these instruments that were able to kind of stand up to the rigors of that and look good on stage. And I guess that was one of the ones. But then I was listening to this and I was just thinking, God, it really doesn't sound all that good, does it? I mean, it's really not compared to what we can get these days. And I feel it's in some ways the same way about the Jupiter 8. Again, it's an iconic thing. It's what it means rather than what it does. And I wondered whether anybody else had an unreasonable love of the Trident. I'm going to come to you first, Jamie, because I know you like a bit of vintage, and it's got a thing about it. There's a certain sort of retro chic going on there with the look, right?
Yeah, I've got a friend, Pat Sansone. He's in the band Wilco, and I remember he's the only person I know that owns one of these, and he really loves it. And he's played a lot, so there's definitely something to it. I must admit, I've never played one.
No, I don't think I have either.
Yeah, to that point though, of like, I do have a Rhodes Chroma and an OBXA and a Prophet 5 and a Jupiter 4, so I've got a few of the old polys, and yeah, man. I mean, some people will complain like something like a Rhodes Chroma just sounds, pre-plastic and relatively stale by today's standards, but it's got no effects,
Yeah.
So it's like you can easily get it there if you slap a few effects on, and that can be distortion as well as as reverbs and the usual modulators or other things that might be called effects. So I think it's a little bit sort of unfair in a way to compare the old to the new in that way. If you're just going to strip it down to how are the oscillators, how are the filters, how does it feel to play, I still think most of the time the old polys win for me. But that is a very nostalgic thing, and I think sometimes it's not the right tool for the job. But I will say they command such crazy prices. I feel bad to sell like an old synth, like an OBX. I mean, obviously the Behringer will probably knock down the price fairly hard. Maybe not. But I'd feel guilty if I sold it for like, $5,000 or something, or $8,000 or whatever people will pay for them. It just feels like it's just going to go into the hands of doctors and lawyers. No offense to them, but
collectors, yeah. Well, it's entirely if this isn't too much of a personal question, how are your membranes on the Chroma?
So it's a good question. I'm glad you asked. The membranes are deeply responsive. I usually use a slapping technique, which does shorten the life of the instrument, but it definitely doubles the excitement.
Poke them with a pencil. Yeah.
The membranes are good. I mean, my Chroma's in good shape. I've got 2 voice cards that are being repaired by RJD2 currently. Those who don't know, RJD2 is a total synth master and can repair synths. He's an absolute knowledge. I wish I was too, but he's got my cards on the bench and they are not coming back to life. So there you go. I've got 6 voice Chroma at the moment, but anyway, we're talking about the Chroma.
I did have that was the other synth. The Rhodes Chroma was something that I really hankered over, and I know Yoad is a massive fan of the Polaris, so because that sounds fantastic. Let's see. I'm going to come to you, Dominic, because I know that you probably have a similar age of synth vintage, appreciation, similar vintage. So, ever played a set of Korg Trident?
Yeah. I was going to start exactly with the same words. I mean, I was lusting over that. I had all the little brochures and everything when I couldn't afford to buy my first synth, and I was getting it together. There was a Korg Trident, obviously the Jupiter 8, and they were out of reach. And then there was a Poly 6 and a Monopoly that came out together from Korg side, and there was a Junos and the JX3Ps and the SH101 that came in on the Roland side, and then suddenly the almost affordable synths came out. They were kind of under $1,000 rather than $1.5 grand, $2,000 or something. And I somehow, I did try them all. I got this Saturday job at the London Rock Shop in Camden and then subsequently in Bristol, when I went to do my A-levels in Bristol, they had another shop there, which is great. And it meant 2 things. It meant I could buy trade price keyboards, and I also got to try everything. And I didn't get on with the Korgs for some reason. The Trident and the it's different when you don't have to, you can play them all. And the Poly 6 and the Monopoly and the Trident didn't quite get me. And I turned into a bit of a Roland fanboy. And it wasn't that they were bad. They just sounded a little bit different. And I think I liked that sort of, to me, it sounded a little bit warmer, I think. And what I would have absolutely loved would have been the Prophet 5 or the T8 or one of those. That would have, having played them all, that's what I came from that shop going, this is what I want. And that was way out of my price range. And I think the Rolands, I got a JX3P in the end because of the MIDI, but a Juno and an SH101 was my first keyboard. And that got me a little bit closer to the Prophet sound away from the Korg. And I've always been more of a fan of the Prophet filters and the Muga filters, and less of the kind of OBX and the Oberheim and the Korg ones, just for some reason. But I mean, Jamie's 100% right. It's the feel and maybe it's just the reminiscence of the whole thing, but it's just a lovely bit of equipment. But I think for most of those vintage synths, the memory is a lot better than they'd actually sound in the studio now.
Isn't it always? Clearly. Well, it's like when you hear those old Top of the Pops tracks and somebody goes, oh yeah, I remember this. And then you hear it and you go, God, that was terrible. What was I thinking? Yeah. It doesn't mean the same thing at all. Yeah. Same kind of deal. Yeah. Matt, I know you've said you're not all that into kind of keyboard synths, but is there not a sort of piece that you'd kind of like to have lying around just as that kind of, look, check out my massive synth, as it were?
So I've talked about check out my massive synth before on the show, and mine of choice is the Korg Poly Ensemble, and I'm really big. The PE1000 and the PE2000. Tom York's using this a lot on his solo albums. That string synth sound is one of these. His is a little bit wonky, and he hasn't had it repaired because he really likes the sort of nuance of the wobbliness of it. But I have the Poly 1000, and this is awesome. And it also has that filter, the Traveler filter, so you get the high pass and the low pass on it, which you can control with a foot pedal. And this thing was beautiful, and I'm so annoyed that I sold it, but I needed money at the time, and it was really heavy. But this thing I love, and I think the strings sound very similar to this Trident. That's that you get on this Korg Poly. So I'd definitely go for something like this. I love machines like this as well that kind of just do one thing and one thing well. I'd really like to just get one of these and a drum machine and some guitar foot pedals and just make an album with that. Just that, buying synths these days, I like to buy them to kind of just do one thing, almost like as a preset. And then I like to see what can I do with them? How can I misuse them? How can I mangle them? And what can I put them through rather than menu diving and doing wave folding or something like that.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I must admit, there was there's another great synth which is totally out of my range in terms of finance. I only got to play on this once. I was working with the Radiophonic Workshop. I was doing some work with them at Peter Gable Studio, and they had the Roland. What is it now? The one with the coloured preset keys on it. You just mentioned it, Dom.
Jupiter 4.
Jupiter 4.
Was it Jupiter 8 though? I think it was.
Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
They both have.
If it had them on the front, it would have been a Compuphonic or a Jupiter 4 on the front edge. If it was on the top, it would probably been a Jupiter 8.
It was on the top.
So
it was on top, yeah. And I had a little play
you
with
definitely
it.
Can't afford that.
No, man. But I must admit, I mean, I wasn't exactly that blown away with it, but to be honest, I was a little bit too anxious anyway, sort of playing kit that belongs to the Radiophonic Workshop and how expensive it is and what have you. So, but yeah, if anyone's got one of those hanging around, they're flogging cheap, let us know.
Yeah, well, they do come up from time to time, but they always, whenever they do, people go, have you seen the price? It seemed that the price of a Jupiter 8 seemed to somehow represent the entire synth resale industry. So people kind of like see that. It's like the marker, you know, it's like the Bitcoin of synth trading, I think, or something like that. But yeah. Anyway, I thought it was kind of fun. If you want to check out Synth Forever stuff, he's got some other cool things. Where's I going to, maybe, well, while we're on the topic of that, I'm just trying to think what's the maybe I should, I know it's been a bit back to back, but I'm going to do this now because then we've got room to do all of our topics. So check out the Modal Cobalt 8 as well. That is a cracking synth. It's got 8 voice extended virtual analog synth, innovative oscillator with 34 algorithms, morphable 4-pole ladder filter, 29 endless encoders for real-time control, internal sequencer and arpeggiator, MPE support, which works really well for expression, modal app for Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, VST3 and AU. If you want to check that out, go to bit.ly/getmodal, I think it was. Yeah, that's right. bit.ly/getmodal, and then they'll be able to figure out where you came from and everybody will be happy. Yes, well, there are a couple more pieces that we've got. Let me just scroll down to what my next... I might have to go here first because we've got a singer on this. So let's go here. This is the Eclipse Sound Dreamtronics. It's called Solaris, which is not actually a synth, but it is based on the Synth V engine. Now, this is... It's contended. We usually have one of these every couple of years, and this is a new sort of virtualized AI vocalist. Here we go. Here she comes. 2, 3, 4.
Miles away. This love is miles away, but I feel
not a great start. But wait.
Taking control.
There it goes. That bit was good. This is getting better.
Is reaching out, leading me further now than I've been before.
Yeah, this is the oops. So this is, there are two reasons why this is interesting. I mean, you know, we've done these periodically over the time, and as we've known, there's been a really big, or there was a really big kind of K-pop / kind of Asian pop. Vocaloid kind of thing, which was one of Yamaha's early technologies, and this is sort of pops up every once in a while. I mean, this is supposed to be, and I'm trying to remember who it is. It's a pop artist, Emma Rowley, and it's supposed to be an English vocalist. And the idea, but what makes this kind of more interesting as well is they're running this as an Indiegogo. So this is actually a kind of, it's a software. I've not seen this done in terms of, you know, like a crowdfunding for a software voice, and it seemed, you know, there are a bunch of people who are interested, but I'm trying to understand the need and the fascination with this thing, because I think we all end up fascinated. You're a vocalist. I'll come to you a bit later on if that's all right, because I'm interested to see what other people say. So yeah, Dom, I mean, the thing about this is sometimes it's because you sort of go, isn't that cool? But should you? I mean, is there...
This is a really... I agree. It's a really weird one, because if you scratch the surface, there's some really weird stuff going on here. There's an engine called Synthesizer V or Synthesizer 5, which these things plug into. And they're very, very kind of K-pop oriented things, because you don't just plug one of these sound modules in. They come with the whole character, so they're almost like the pop star themselves is contained within this entire package. So when you dig into the company that's raising this money, more than 50% of the company are graphic designers. They've spent their whole life drawing the promotions for these characters, because I couldn't understand why, like some of the things you get for sponsoring it was like, we'll draw you a picture kind of stuff. And I was like, well, this is weird. Why are there so many designers in here? So their background is running the promo on these characters that are developed, and they're really clever. They're beautifully designed, and clearly they've made the leap to go, well, there really isn't any UK oriented singers. They're all sort of Eastern oriented ones. There is one, but I couldn't get to hear it, and I would imagine it's a pretty bad one that's just been translated. So they've come in and they've said, right, we're gonna make this vocal patch for them. And it's one step better than what you've just played, because Synthesizer 5 have produced an AI version. There's a standard version, which is what you've just played, and an AI version, which has just come out. And they want the money to build the library into an AI version, which no one's heard yet. But I presume they've been working with the guys with Synthesizer 5 to do it. So that's the story. What I don't understand is a lot of your money is going towards creating the character, which I presume they can then market. And they have a thing saying, look, you know, if you buy the vocal pack, you get it to use what you want, but you can't really promote it. You can kind of sell key rings with the character on, but it's our character. And it's quite, if I was on Dragon's Den head on, I'd be like, sorry, I'm out at this stage because it's too confusing.
It's like a sample library where you can't actually use any of it.
You can still use all the sounds.
So this is what Solaris looks like.
It's weird.
This is what an English singer would look like in the K-pop world. That's interesting. Right.
I mean, they need to be able to come back, because I don't want to diss them. And, you know, it'd be great if they could pop us an email and say next week, actually, do you know what? It's not like that. But it's not clear from the website. But it looks like they get the rights to this character which they design and the things, and they can actually push it like that. You get the rights to make music with the character, but you'd have to do your own drawings kind of stuff. But it's very much more than just an AI library. They're paying for this whole character development thing, really. And we can't hear it yet because it's on this new AI one. So theoretically, it should be a lot better than the sample you played.
I would hope so. You'd hope so, wouldn't you, Jamie? I mean, it's interesting that. I mean, I wonder if you can ask Alexa to sing you a song, because that isn't that kind of.
Yeah,
you can
send her the lyrics, and then maybe she could just.
It's going to be a real tearjerker. But I've actually worked with Jimmy. I've worked with Jimmy Edgar a fair bit. Like, just did a sample pack with him for Splice, the In Living 808 that we worked so many months on. Yeah. And so I've been in contact a lot more with Jimmy, and he just wrote on Twitter that he just signed a consent form with his favorite rapper to make an AI clone of his voice, and he's sending over an a cappella data sheet to create a model, and the programmer will make a text-to-speech version. And he says, I've heard what they did, and it already is literally indistinguishable. Wow. So, like, there's people like that working on other levels, you know, that don't need any money from you. No, but I mean, it is an interesting sphere. I mean, I don't like a lot of the connotations. Obviously, this idea that you could just remove humanity from the whole music making process. But pretty much gets.
Yeah, but don't you think that you know, that what it does demonstrate is the emotion that you can convey from a proper human input is a million miles away from what these things can do. I mean, okay, it might get better, but I don't see how it's ever going to get to be as good as Yeba, say, for instance. It's just not possible.
No. There's an interesting possible aside. I did a thing on the last podcast using this Sanken mic that I talk about every time. I finally got around to using the damn thing. So, like, you record at 192 kilohertz, whatever. It records up to 100 kilohertz, the Sanken CUX 100K. So you think, why record up to 100 kilohertz? But it's basically when you slow down the file like 4 times, whatever, you're still at a very good rate. It's not a low fidelity recording, and I demonstrate like a very good chirps against it and just how much crazy it is. And what you really hear is I do like a lion's roar, like a really crappy like "Wah!" and then slow it down. It actually becomes truly crazy on the Sanken. Like, but you can hear the opening and closing of, like, you know,
your epiglottis,
the back of your mouth. Yeah, you can hear the pipe kind of resonating and stuff. It's absolutely crazy. So it's bizarre. It becomes like a mouth cave, and sort of like, I just think if they worked on that, I mean, obviously they are in some regard, but I've seen other ones where you can see a side shot of a human sort of vocal tract, and you can kind of go, hey,
wasn't that one of the Google things? Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, so it just sort of feels like that would be good if you could sort of go to a doctor and go, hey, can you like just shove some stuff in my mouth and like make me like get all my dimensions. Do you know what I mean? So you could sort of, I like that idea, sort of like get a kind of, I mean, if I was in craft work, I'd be fully behind all this, of course.
That would be a tricky mold to make. That I think it'd have to be a scan, wouldn't it? Because
it'd be a tricky mold to make.
Hold on, it'll be set in a minute. It only takes 3 minutes. Oh, yeah. Sorry, he's gone.
Yeah. But you know, I think they removed it. Yeah. Anyway, I think they did remove the vocal cords from the most famous Indian singer, didn't they? Asha Bhosle. Am I right?
Really?
I think anyway.
Did they? Just because they hated her voice?
So.
Wow.
No, she was tremendous. Oh my God, she was amazing.
I'm assuming it was after she passed away.
Exactly. Get rid of that woman's vocal cords.
Like a peacock, yeah.
It's like, you get your hands chopped off if you steal, you get your vocal cords removed if you sing.
That would be interesting, though, because then you could have a singing cat. Because if you had all the tracks of different animals, that would be cool, wouldn't it? You sort of like,
it could be. It could be weird. Matt,
singing pipes. Yeah. Singing
Matt,
toilet.
Does this have connotations for education? Because obviously, you've got hundreds or regular producers coming through your courses who perhaps can't sing but can produce tracks, whatever. I mean, we've talked about this before. Is it a viable tool for them to use? Would they use something like this to kind of just stick a scratch vocal on something, for instance?
Everything is a viable tool for any producer. The thing I'm most excited about for this is not using it in a way that it's been designed and intended to use. Give this to the world and see what they do with it. See what they can do with it. See what they can misuse it.
Profanity, I'm thinking, would be a good start.
Yeah, well,
that's not a misuse. That's a good use.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the solid use.
Think about like the 909, the 808, the 303, what they were designed to do, and how they've been misused and shipped into other styles of music. So what can this do? What can this open up? What other styles of music can this open the doors to? How can this be misused? I don't think we'll move towards all music being used with AI, although I think we should be very aware of its impact, because it's not going away and it's getting better and better and better and better. But I think people are always going to want to listen to the Beatles and listen to humanized music. But I think this will help us introduce other styles of music, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. I think we should be embracing different styles of music, and that will only happen by putting this in the hands of everyone out there in the world, the music producers, and see what somebody will use this in a way, and it could just go bang. What is this? Something new,
very striking.
Yeah.
Don't you
just
think
in the
with
same
the
way.
case of like the 303? Yeah. Sorry, man.
Go on, Jamie.
But you think in the case of something like the 303, in that era of technological kind of progress, it was happening so slowly. You say someone could get hold of this, but this is happening like this month. Next month, some viable alternative to the same technology, slightly modified, will come around. Are they supposed to learn that one or this one? Are they? You know what I mean? It's sort of like it's this sort of tricky thing of like which ship do you get on board when it's moving so fast? I mean, the idea of AI is this pretty big sort of cloudy thing. So of like, I like AI, or like I believe in the future of AI, but it's like a kind of that's a big thing, isn't it? I mean, I completely agree. It's inevitably coming, but I think just bringing up a child and stuff, I feel like I really want him away from the screens, and I want him more in the world of
presence.
Maybe I'm old school, but I think more humanity would be a good thing. But I also agree, like, I think keep using it and abusing it completely.
I think that's right. I mean, I think it's interesting. And if my daughter's anything to go by, she uses technology all the time, but she's also incredibly mistrustful, to the point where she would never even pay for a subscription or anything, because even if it's only like £1 a month to increase her storage for her photos or whatever. No, I'm not letting the man have my subscription. They'll know too much.
Wow.
I mean, there's this really. So I think there's a deep maybe it's country specific, but certainly in the UK, there's less of that.
Nick, Have you got access? Can you get into the chat on vMix? Because I've just posted a YouTube link in there. I don't know if you can access that, but that's an example of somebody using, which was very old vocal synthesis technology, if you want. And somebody who's then taken that and put it into, it's sort of basically circuit bent it. I've been watching this person on YouTube called Lars Lucy Number 8 Legions, strange name, and he's got these couple of these Japanese old sort of synthy vocal toys, and they've got the faces of the people on as they're talking, and he's got it all connected with motorized MIDI controllers, and it sounds awesome. It just sounds like something off. It's like a cross between Aphex Twin and Boards of Canada and early Jamie Liddell stuff.
I can't. Unfortunately, I'm on the wrong computer.
Now the secret's out.
I'm on the wrong computer.
All this time I was
I am sorry. Oh, that's a shame.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
sorry, I will try and find it. If you send it another way, I'll put it in the chat room. I could get it, but I can't get it by that. vMix is
Shall I send it on email? Is it,
yeah, that could work, and I can certainly put that in the stuff.
I'd really love.
I thought it was interesting, though. Yeah, sorry.
So I was just going to say, I really love Biggie to do my sat nav. I think that's really the number one use for this kind of technology is to replace your sat nav.
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't there. There was one. There was a very famous one. It was who's the guy from Pulp Fiction? I've forgotten what his name is now.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson did one, but it was really abusive, and it's supposed to be brilliant.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, you can now have him on as your Alexa, and he will be swearing. He swears his head off and everything.
Interesting. No, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I suppose that kind of ties in a little bit into. Let me see if I can find the. Yeah. Where's it gone? I had a. I just wait. It's this one. So I might have to open it again because I think maybe I closed the link. So if I go over. Oh no, there we go. I got it. So if I go to this page here, there's a really interesting article on Attack Mag. I'll post the link in the show notes, which was just literally about how the Japanese technology shaped so much of our modern music culture. Unfortunately, there's no byline, so I can't give anybody a name check, but it's a great article. It kind of, if I could summarise, at least as I understand it, there were so many factors that seem to come into play with this. I mean, essentially, Japanese had a long history of craftsmanship, which, as we've seen with Yamaha, they're very big on that, going back, and also the exchange rate in the sort of late 70s, early 80s was very favourable, encouraged innovation and investment. They also massive innovators in industrialisation. Also known for taking external concepts and kind of making them better, rather than coming up with something completely new. They're really good modifiers, and also their build quality and this sort of the build quality and the long lastingness of that particular phase of manufacture. I think that's all changed. I mean, all these things have shifted because now you can get things made kind of anywhere. There's some very interesting quotes in there about the whys and wherefores and where the market's going. But I just thought it was fascinating. I mean. Do you feel strong? I mean, do you see that this kind of, because Japanese technology has shaped so much of what we do in electronic music. I mean, not so much maybe software, but certainly in the kind of sounds that we identify with. In the same way that the distorted guitar is a thing that came from you can trace the sources of that, and it really spoke to us as humans. The kind of Roland sound and what have you has the same sort of resonance, I suppose, culturally.
The thing I was reading that mag, you're totally right, Nick. One thing I was reading in that article, really, what I think they might have maybe missed, and I could be wrong here, is that maybe, Japanese were looking at people like Bob Moog and him producing these massive synthesizers, and then them thinking, oh, how can we make this smaller and more affordable? And
miniaturization was a big thing as well, wasn't it? That's true.
Yeah.
Miniaturization.
So I think there was that, and I think that's kind of been missed in the article. But nonetheless, what they've also done is they've gone, okay, how can we make this cheaper? How can we make this more affordable and smaller, and you can carry it around and that. But they're forward thinking. They're also those that started looking at like the MS-20 and making it semi-modular and yeah, they've done a lot. So I don't want to diss them and just say that they just basically took what somebody else did and trying to make it cheaper and more convenient to carry around. They certainly haven't. They've done more than that, and they pushed it further and further along for us. So yeah, totally. It's a really great article.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you know, you're appreciating of all kinds of vintage technology. You know, whether it's you're fully international and non-denominational racially, shall we say, in terms of. But the Japanese stuff does have a thing. I mean, there is a thing that it kind of has, and I mean, there are flavors of it, obviously, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, look, I'll never forget the experience of doing this 808 sort of sample pack thing I just did. Just trying to recreate those sounds from scratch as faithfully as I could, and sort of going through all the schematics and all the old papers and how the machine was designed. The 808 was just a beautiful exercise in elegance, like excellent sound design, and like really exacting standards. Like, if I'm not mistaken, they had to stop manufacturing them because they actually made use of a broken transistor that made the white noise part of the 808. It was actually a part that they insisted on using that could only be had as a sort of, a limited
Reject.
stock. Yeah, it was a reject. So really all clones of the 808 suffer from not having this transistor because it can't be done in that way. So, but just having seen the elegance of the design of that thing, I mean, anyone who's tried to put together like 16 sounds that make up a really useful drum kit, do you know what I mean? Just even that simple exercise, good luck to you trying to come up with a set as wildly, harmonious and incredible as the 808. It's just that in itself is just, I don't know, that the man hours that went into it, it's just unthinkable in a way. I think they work very hard. Another cliche about the Japanese, which I think is obviously true. So it's a tireless work ethic, and it shows in a simple, you pull away any of those machines and have a look at them, and you see the excellence in them. So yeah, I mean, amazing.
Interesting.
Rock the house.
Well, something that you mentioned earlier, Dom, was the fact that, once these things are out in the world, I think that you might have briefly alluded to it. There's some great quotes in this article. One of is like people from big designers from Korg say, well, you can make all of the stuff you like, but once it goes in the world, it never gets used in the way that you originally designed it for. You have no idea what's going to happen.
And all of this touches on stuff we've just mentioned. Like I don't think I'd have been into synthesizers had they not brought out a synth under $1,000, like the Juno or the JX3P, and suddenly it broke the market open for people of my age. And I'd been playing piano at school, and I'd got bored of piano, and it came along at exactly the right time. Suddenly I could stretch, and I could just about afford this thing, and that kicked off my whole life, And the other thing is, and Jamie's 100% right, the attention to detail and their classic designs. But it's Roland's obsession with trying to make synths that sound like real instruments, hence the preset names on some of their old synths. I think the Jupiter 4's got preset like real noise sounds on there. My JX3P, I think, was the last one. It's got a flute setting and a string 1 and a string 2. And I've mentioned this before. We did some recording of sounds for, I think, the JV 1080 series at the studio that I had. And the guy behind Roland was absolutely obsessed with making electronic versions of real instruments, and everything else was an accident. And it's only since he stepped down, and the TB303 was a really strong attempt to make a thing that sounded like a bass guitar, and the Jupiter 8, I think Jupiter 8 has preset names on it, doesn't it? I think.
But I wonder, because it's interesting thinking about the bass guitar, right? Okay, at the time you think it sounds nothing like a bass guitar, but when you think about what was going on perhaps in prog, like Stanley Clarke was using a lot of touch wire, a lot of filtered kind of sounds on the bass. Maybe that's actually really influential in what they were trying to do. That's a possibility.
It was your rhythm set mainly. If you were a guitarist and you didn't have a bass player and a drummer, you'd get a little dramatic 606 and a 90 and a 303, and that would be your rhythm section together, and it would be 400 quid. I think they were 199 each when they came out. And that would be a little thing, that's a service to musicians, live musicians. And then suddenly, of course, the way these things had been built, they just sounded amazing. But it was a complete sideways step, you know. And that's why, you know, when you read about, you know, it's only recently that they've gone back to the roots and done boutique releases and kind of capitalized on it. Everyone's saying, why don't you build another Jupiter 8? And it's like, well, why should we? It doesn't sound like a string section. You know, we're really happy with what we're doing. You know, 1080s and 28, you know, it's just a beautiful story. And I don't think that's true of the other synthesizer manufacturers who were the Moogs and the Prophets, and we're building electronic instruments.
Well, no, you say that, but you look in the Korg MS-20 manual, and there are plenty of presets for clarinet, flute, oboe, all of those things.
Yeah,
by the way, thanks everybody for the super stickers. They're coming in thick and fast. Brilliant! That's very, very kind. Wow. We're going to have, when we finally do get together, we are going to have a drink.
I like the way it gives a description, Nick, when it comes up. So, like,
yeah, I can't figure out a way. I can't figure out a way for it to actually say. What does it say? It says the sticker is
lemon character
and baby lemon jumping on their way. Yeah, that's robust. Thank you very much. I can't figure out a way to bring those in. It doesn't work. Now, Rancy actually hasn't been able to do that, but Rancy's posted a super comment, which now I've got an entry in the spreadsheet. I can set it up as a data source and bring that in as well. So I do beg your pardon. It's just a question of logistics. But thank you. I find. What do you think about that, Jamie? Do you think they were going for the sort of Stanley Clarke touch wire kind of piccolo bass vibe on the TB303?
It's an interesting angle. I mean, they probably were thinking like, where
I'll
is
say
bass
that. I'll say that. No.
No, I think they're probably sort of saying like, I'll take this, probably no. But I mean, but I think they're probably thinking, where could bass go? I don't know. Yeah. But another thing that you can't forget about this is like when they had the little small pieces, like 606, 303, very light. Anyone who's held one, you know, it's like a toy. But, you know, they link together and they sync together. Like so beautifully that you could kind of like think, oh, I've got this part of my collection, I could get this one. And they were smart to think like you could add these things together and like make a family of instruments that would, yeah, exactly. They were Volcas before their time, and that's a huge part of, you know, why acid house and all that stuff even happened. It's because like really high, you're just out of your mind going, oh shit, just make a quick pattern on these machines. It sounds magic. Like sometimes, I think some of the tracks, like acid tracks, famously, it was just the pattern that was already in the 303.
Yeah.
We didn't even program it.
I'm just going to say,
but hey, man, it sounds good.
Check out the adverts. I'm sure they're around. When Roland adverts first came out, there's pictures literally of guitarists with those two in the backpack sitting practicing to them. Honestly, they may not have been what the designers made of them, but the marketing people who are, I know exactly who's going to buy this. Guitarist.
Wow, it's a fascinating subject. I mean, we do have a kind of, in recent weeks, I've been kind of ending the show with a kind of, what have you been up to recently technologically? What have you discovered? What kind of thing have you found that you've been riffing on? And I wonder, I know, Dom, you started with, because you were showing the expert loopers or expert sleepers.
It's expert sleepers. Hang on, can I do this? Expert sleepers.
Hello.
So you hit a button. I'll do it again. Hang on. Hello. And then you can literally just play that. Like, this is back to the Beardy Man live thing, and I'm sure Jamie can do this standing on his head with different bits and pieces. But it is pretty amazing that there wasn't something that it's called a Crossfade loop synth. And
I'm just trying to see where
it's really funny that that Jamie mentioned at the beginning that there wasn't something around that did this, and it just occurred to me. There really isn't. If you want to do a live set with Ableton Live or with the looper in the new looper in Logic, you just want to be able to shout something into the mic and then turn it into an instrument. So
43 English pounds. There we go.
Yeah, it's really I'm still running the demo. I think it's a 30 days demo, and you can sync it up. You can just turn that one word into hello. Let's see if I can find a slightly better example.
It's super cool, right?
And then move the stuff. Loads and loads. And I'm not even touching the filters there, the fuzz, this pulse width mod. I've just got it hooked up to a little box here with some knobs on the front, exactly like we were saying earlier. And it's just for 40 quid. It's just really, really useful.
He's a busy man, and expert sleepers. He's a busy man. Like his modules. Every other week, he's like, "Oh, I've just added a small update to it. It contains a new granular synthesizer. Jesus Christ.
Distinct just got an effects processor, didn't it? It got new effects algorithms, I think.
I mean, the Distinct EX is like an absolute monster. I've got one of those things. I can barely keep up with the firmware updates. I feel like you just come back and expect it to be some utility update, and he's literally added, polyphonic engine for something. It's like, the guy is obviously a very smart man indeed.
Yeah.
So,
to be fair, I didn't realize they did. I didn't realize they did VSTs. To be honest, I got some modules and stuff, and it was like, what is this thing? And
I didn't either.
Really playable, and it all came about because the other thing I was checking out was the new looper stuff, semi-new looper stuff in Logic. So Logic released the update a while back now, which had Ableton-esque live looping. It's almost a direct copy of the session view in Ableton.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's really neat. It's really neat, and because I'm a bit more, I've got Ableton. I've used them both. I'm a bit more used to Logic, and it works with push, or not push, all of the stuff, the tactile stuff that works with Ableton. These kind of things, I forget what they're called. This, and it's really neat. And then this was a natural extension of that, wanting to just kind of shout something into a microphone and turn it into a bass sound or play around with it. And I've been really happy the last couple of days. So very good.
Cool. I want that thing.
Yeah. What about you, Matt? Yeah. What have you been working on and enjoying recently?
I've been enjoying looking at interesting ways of mixing on the fly in modular, no surprise. So at the minute, I'm just sending things to mixers. But what I've started doing is taking the inverted envelope, either the audio envelope or even a trigger envelope, and inverting that and using that to mix things. I'm not explaining this very well.
So it creates a space around the thing that's already in the mix.
It's automatic side chaining from one instrument to another. So if I've got my bass synth going and I've got a lead line going, I send that lead line envelope inverted to this, and it turns it down when this goes up, and vice versa. So you're getting always this nice mixing. I mean, you've got to play around with it a little bit. You can't just but actually the thing is, if you want one thing to be completely quiet, if you want the bass to go, you just open up that filter or something on your main lead line, and suddenly your bass goes down. So you're sort of mixing with just very little movements. But I've also been applying some parallel compression there as well to get a more produced sound within the modular, which is what I'm really focusing on this suitcase beast here to be my instrument, and it's really come on. I wish I'd have been documenting this whole thing on my YouTube channel or something over the years, because every week, every month, something else I'm finding out about how to either get that better produced sound, whether it's mixing, signal flow, sequencing techniques, and just squeezing so much out of so little.
Yeah, well, that's often the way to go forward, isn't it? That's how we innovate. What about you, Jamie? Have you been riffing on anything recently?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, this Sanken I finally pulled out, and it wasn't a disappointment. It's a true. I've always looking for something that's truly new. I mean, I think we all are in a way, aren't we? In some ways, but we talk about these technical innovations over time with synths and stuff. But the Sanken, when it offered this 100 kilohertz recording, I thought, is it really going to do?
Is it a digital mic? Am I kind of is it actually
no, it's an analog.
Oh, yeah, right, okay.
It's a microphone without top limits on the frequency response. A very interesting mic.
I understand.
Real sort of scientific mic. Similar to sort of like you might find like Earthworks DPA. There's very high fidelity microphones. If you're using it just in a traditional capacity, it's just a very honest mic, for want of a better word. Obviously, it's got this extended high range, very extended. And it's also quite hard to find equipment that will pair with it, because your traditional mic preamps sort of have a roll-off essentially on the top. Why would you allow frequencies as high as 100 kilohertz to pass through? So essentially, you have to be careful about the equipment you're using. But I've just bought one of those Sound Devices Mix Pre 2s, and they have 32-bit float recording, and I think the preamps go up to 80 kilohertz. So that's my newest combo that I'm excited to try. I haven't actually kicked that off yet, but I just got that before I came out on this trip over here. 32-bit float recording is totally crazy.
Wow. So what would you be using that for? Is that for sampling and
recording
or for or for recording your final master?
You can record bats. Yeah, you can totally record. I think bats are a bit higher. The Anabat recorder goes up to 300 kilos, I think. The Cicada Brood X is coming to America. I'll probably get some good like drum beats from the cicadas' wings. I mean, there's things like that. It just allows you access to the unheard world. I mean, like anytime I might be wrong about this, but I think anytime like you make a noise, like a noisy sound, say like a snare drum, something that's creating noise that goes up, and and it represents sort of frequencies that go possibly beyond our audible range. This microphone will catch them, and you can look at them in the RX and see what was there. And obviously the joy of the mic does come when you pitch down 100 kilohertz, and then all of a sudden it's down, and then the top level of it becomes 20 kilohertz, and it becomes part of the audible range. So it's just a super cool thing. I recorded salt in the last Nitty on the podcast, just grains of molten salt, just crunching them with my fingers, and you slow it down, and you can hear it looks like breaking glass on the Sanken. By the time it's slowed down enough, it's like little pieces of individual glass. I mean, it's totally incredible. It's this part of the fractal world, isn't it? We know that everything mirrors everything else somehow. But I discovered somehow salt is glass, which is a little bit disconcerting when you put it in your mouth.
Wow. Well, I suppose it's crystal.
But there you go. Yeah, it's crystals. Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway,
Well,
that's my current fascination.
So basically, you're obsessively recording things to hear if there's a hidden message.
Yeah. I will say you've got to be careful with the gain staging, but that's a 32-bit recording. It's crazy. I've got to learn more about it, but it seems like it's very, very hard to clip the signal. Because I realised I've got all these fancy converters. I've got the Crane Song Head, the la, but all of them are 24-bit converters. You can do 32-bit float conversion in the DAW, but can you record it a 32-bit float? As far as I'm aware, like this is one of the only recorders that allows you to do it. It's pretty damn cool.
Is there anything in the world that plays it back apart from the Sound Device's device, or does it actually?
Oh yeah, you can play it back, all right.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But yeah, I mean,
just
that's the
gonna
thing.
say
Like, DAWs have got it.
I was just going to say that it shifts the aliasing point as well. So I wanted to try recording stuff in megahertz or just to see what happens exactly like this. If you're recording digitally, you can record up to half the bandwidth you're using. So 48K, you can record up to 24K, and anything above that 48 folds back over the point, and you can hear it as aliasing noise. So if you chuck it up at 100K, the fold point is way out of hearing range, so it really is justifiable. I know that there's loads of debate about whether you should be recording at 96K and 40K. We should just do it because it's possible and see what happens and see what it sounds like. It's, there's no reason not to. This is just great, really good.
Although I will say, when my system is running at 192, and I've got a pretty legitimate system, it is having a bloody nightmare. It hates it. It just goes crazy. Like I have to restart the it makes the computer just hate me. So I lasted
about a week. I lasted about a week doing it on my system, but it'll get better. The idea of even recording at 48K it's just what we should. We definitely should. We shouldn't limit ourselves to that kind of stuff. It's got to be
fair point.
Totally
well, so there's a whole other topic we could get into involved there, but I think I'm going to have to bring things to a wrap. I'm actually going to the theatre tonight to see Ranulph Fiennes in a one-man performance, who I personally find incredibly tedious, but it might be interesting. There's no, I'm going to the theatre in this kind of environment is quite challenging because you have to sit far away. It's quite a weird experience. It's a bit strange, but it's certainly a lot of fun.
It feels like you're on the verge of a heckle there, Nick.
Imagine if I heckled. That would be. I don't think that would be the done thing.
You could do it from behind a mask, though, couldn't you? You could be like, everyone
me?
around you.
What are you talking about?
The joy of the masked heckle.
Wow, that's a thought.
Enjoy it.
I'll tell you how I'll tell you how it goes. I don't think I've quite got. I know now. If it happens and there's a public outrage, people will be able to find out, where the source of it, if they're clever enough. But I suspect they won't be looking on this podcast. Jamie, thank you so much for having us. Thanks check out Jamie's stuff out. Jamie Liddell Music. What's coming up now? Have you got anything kind of big coming up your way?
Massive.
Okay.
That's all I can
Something
say.
to look out for.
That's huge.
More podcasts on the way, but Lovely to have you. Thank you so much.
Too big to fit on this screen. It's like way bigger.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And also, Mr. Matt Hodson, are you releasing today? What's happening in the release schedule?
I should get on with that. Yeah, I'm owing the world a release this month, so yeah, I'm going to finish that off later on. Although I've just received these new filters, these MS-20 filters. They've got both a high pass and a low pass in them. And they distort, and I've got to play with that. And also this music thing, modular mini drive, another little distortion unit. So I'll probably end up spending a load of time playing with these. I need to get out more.
How does that work? Just a quick question. How does it work? Do you have a release point every month, or do you just push it to the very last minute and then maybe you release the next month a week into the month, or are you kind of a bit more planned than that?
It's a good question. Some months I've actually ended up producing 2 or 3 pieces of music quite early on, and I just sort of bank them if I want to. Smart. And I can save them for later, or I can think, shall I bring them out this month, or shall I save them? Shall I push myself now to produce something for this time? So it depends how I'm feeling. Right now, yeah, I've got something done, but I'm thinking I've got a few days left for this month. Maybe I'll just challenge myself to come up with something new.
Fire it up, give it a go.
Keep pushing those ideas out there, man. It's what it's all about. Just keep doing stuff.
Absolutely, and obviously people should check you out on maths on and maths on YouTube. All of your stuff. I think there's a link there. What does that say? Oh yeah, Matt. Yeah, there we go. And also, yes, and also Mr. Dominic Hawken. Thank you very much for joining us too. And,
thank you.
And people should check out your Mr. Wiggly incinerator plugin amongst any other things that you're doing, for sure.
Please do, and definitely check out Jamie's Hanging Out with Audiophiles podcast, because I don't know if that came across, but it's stunning and
yes,
amazing.
Very, very
There's
good
like
stuff.
about 100 or 80 something of them. So if you haven't come across it, just Google Hanging Out with Audiophiles. It's an amazing podcast.
Thanks,
yes,
John.
I think that's very very good words to end on. So that's it for this week. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks to all our sticker and chat people, very much appreciated. And all the people in the chat rooms, we will be spending that on beer when the time comes and we can all be in the same room together, or non-alcoholic beverages or snacks or whatever it may be. It will go to totally irresponsible use. I can verify that. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for watching. That was Sonic Talk episode 670. Good Lord. See you next time. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Yeah. Bye.